think we're live.
Good. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. It's 2:08 p.m. and we are convening a special meeting of the Kentucky State Board of Elections. This is a limited purpose meeting. In addition to approving our prior minutes and passing along some funding to one of our counties, we're going to review 22 county plans for consolidation of their precincts. I don't think we have any other business before us. We'll have our next regular meeting next month. I'll start by calling the roll as I see you on the great big screen here. Member Lane.
Good afternoon. I'm Lynn Lane, retired clerk from Ballard County and a member.
Member Johnson.
Jerry Johnson, member from Franklin County.
Member Chandler.
Ben Chandler, member from Woodford County.
Member Skolnick.
Corey Skolnick, member Jefferson County.
Member Brangers.
Deanna Brangers, member Jefferson County.
Member Sears. We don't have any sound for you, Dwight. Can you try again?
Dwight Sears, member, Pulaski County.
Thank you. And then do I see Member Brown as well? I see a window with his name. So we expect Member Brown to join.
Michael Brown, member Jefferson County. I apologize for being a couple of minutes late.
No worries at all. Okay, so Member Lewis unfortunately can't join us today, but we do have a quorum. Let me ask at the outset, does anyone have a hard stop this afternoon? We'll go as fast as we can, but does anyone have to leave? Just so we know for quorum purposes. Okay, very good. Thank you. Our first item of business is to review and approve minutes of our August 15th meeting. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Make that motion.
Can I
I'll
get a
second it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any discussion or any changes? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nice have it. Next, review of and vote on memorandum of agreement for election security fund reimbursement to Wayne County. Can you walk us through that, please, Karen?
This is, we haven't done this for a little while, but if the board recalls that SBE had a security grant that we were assisting counties in late 21 and in 22 to purchase election equipment. Wayne County has just completed the purchase of new election equipment to be used in November. So they were still eligible for the $2,500 per precinct amount that we had provided under this agreement to other counties. And so they have 19 precincts. Their request is for $47,500 and they're eligible for $47,500. And I will just add, they are still eligible as well under House Bill 1 for any balance. That this is funding that we provided and we will have the memorandum understanding of agreement with Wayne County.
Okay, very good. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's have it. Okay, so we've gotten to the meat of our meeting. Here's what I would suggest that we do. You probably can't see in the window up there, but we have, I believe, 8 counties, clerks or deputies or both that are present here at the SBE office that would like to speak about their proposals. We also have a few clerks joining us on the Zoom. And so in the interest of time, what I would propose is that we give them a chance to be heard, try to limit it to 4 or 5 minutes for any presentation, and then give you all an opportunity to ask any questions or address any concerns you have. Does that sound fair? So I think we should start with the folks that traveled here and let them present and then be on their way. And then we'll go to the folks that are on Zoom. I see, so I'm going to go alphabetically, but I see Bullitt is on Zoom. We don't have anyone present here today in the room from Bullitt, I assume, right?
No.
Okay, so we'll go alphabetically. Oh, I'm so sorry, I skipped Boone. We have anyone from Boone? Okay, can we come back to you after we let the folks here go? Is that okay, Stacy? Okay, so Boone and Bullitt are virtual. We have Carter. Anyone from Carter? No?
They
Okay,
sent their documentation. Was documentation that they requested it on.
okay. Christian, do we have anyone from Christian County?
No, she sent
No.
documentation.
Okay. Davis County, I think I saw the clerk. If you or anyone from your county would like to come up and present, floor is yours. Okay. Yeah. You don't have to present, you can if you want. If you just want to take questions, that's fine too, whatever you like.
No, I'd like to present. I was
Yes,
just
please. Yeah,
Waiting for your cue.
go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. If you have looked over my election plan, it was the same plan that was previously submitted for the 2023 primary. So if there were concerns about that in the primary, I don't understand why my plan got passed in the primary. Now, I understand in the 2022 general election, you had concerns. I did not have the sports center, which was the biggest location in Davis County because of scheduling conflicts and large contract fees. And there was disapproval from local groups because I did not have those locations. But in the 2023 primary, this was remedied. We were able to secure the sports center for the next 5 years, and we added another location at the Nets, including the HL Netwood Center. We now have 14 locations and 77,000-ish registered voters, and this covers 2,330 voters per location. The exact same plan in the primary. In 2022, we only had 12 voting centers, and our largest was Owensboro Christian Church. We had 3,958 voters at this location with the longest wait time of 15 minutes. We had 8 clerks checking in voters, which averages to 38 voters per hour per clerk. This equals 456 voters checked in by each clerk during the 12-hour day. With the addition of the sports center and the Netwood Center, that will disperse some of those voters to these additional locations and greatly reduce the wait time. By adding 9 more clerks at that same average, 456 voters per hour, we can check in 4,100 more voters in the city on election day. On election day in the 2020 general election, we processed over 4,000 voters in the sports center alone, and we only had 6 locations. So for the past 3 elections, we have kept in mind at the forefront the presidential election regarding our election plan. And from the amount of equipment to the number of poll workers and locations, we have been practicing for the presidential election and believe that our plan is solid. Now, here's what I don't understand. I have looked at counties that are similar in population to Davis and similar in size, and here's what I have discovered. Hardin County has 91,000 voters in 12 locations. Warren County has 92-ish thousand voters in 12 locations. Madison County has 3 major cities, 74,000-ish voters in 8 locations. I have 2 more locations than Hardin and Warren counties with less voters. I have more locations and more voters than Madison County. And if you look at my map, the centers are distributed evenly in the county and the city, covering 2,330 voters per location. So in fact, I'm here trying to understand why the rest of the clerks did not get approval. At least 8 clerks, including myself, submitted to you the exact amount, the exact same plan that we submitted in the primary. So that's covering my plan. Do you have any questions?
Do you have any questions for Leslie? Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Grayson, anyone from Grayson?
Yeah, she had sent us a letter documentation that I forwarded,
Okay. Greenup?
saying he
Same.
is sent.
Okay. Harlan?
Right.
Okay.
Ashley's here.
Hey, welcome.
I'm Ashley Sullivan with the Harlan County Clerk's Office. I am a new clerk, and so I feel like I have took a lot of time, not only looking at what was done before, but the problems that we had within our county, and then looking at the community and what the community needed. And that's why we had moved to go to the voting centers. I think you said it best when you had made it, I think you said you made it easier to vote, and that's something that I wanted to do in another county. And so I think one of the big things with Harlan is we went from 32 precincts to 18. And that sounds huge, I know it does, but if you look at it, we had so many areas that already had multiple precincts voting at that one area that there's technically, you could say 24 precincts, which equals our 18 voting centers. I think that's a huge point that I'd like to make. And not only that, but our election workers, it's really hard to find the election workers. Just our last election, I was pulling girls off of the line that was there to help us run the election, saying you have to go here, because if not, we'd have poll close. I had one area that gets a little bit more traffic with extra workers that I had to pull them and put over here, because if not, we would have had to close one of our polls. And that's something that I definitely don't want to do. So if there's any questions, I know I sent a letter to Ms. Sellers that passed on to the board to try to shed some more light as far as distance and stuff. We kept our rural areas because we are out so far, and we want to make sure everybody has that convenience to get to each location. But if there's any questions, feel free to ask. I'm here to answer.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you for being here. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to welcome my former home county clerk to the board today. I'm sorry I'm not there to see you, Ashley. I hear nothing but great things about the work you're doing up there. And just wanted to welcome you. You don't know me, but I know a lot of your family. So keep on doing the work you're doing. I thought your plan looked really good. Being very familiar with Harlan, I had no questions or problems with what you submitted. It looks like a good plan. So thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I do have a question for you, and I know either me or my staff, we've talked to all of you also, it's a little anticlimactic, but I know one issue that was raised by your predecessor the last few years with doing a vote center model was the Wi-Fi was not reliable. And then you had to do the old fashioned precincts with the books. Has that gotten better? Is it now more functional to do a vote center model?
Yes, there's Harlan being, in the mountains and hills, and I mean, really anywhere, service is spotty anywhere nowadays. But some of the areas that we did have problems with, we have reached out, and either that area has actually had their own Wi-Fi put in, or we have used the not the cradle points. I keep wanting to call them the cradle points. And before the election, we went out and tested all those to make sure they were up and running. We did have one location that was a previous precinct that was spotty every now and then. But I think that goes with, that was an area that had nothing whatsoever before. And so we were just happy to have something, even if it was shortly, which of course, I think there was another location that wasn't able to connect, and we had to send somebody out to address that.
Okay. I have one more question. Does anyone else have a question before I take a second stab? And I know you told us about this. I just want everyone else to understand it as well. So we had asked about sort of the population disbursement and where people work and what the community flows were. And you explained to us how you put the vote centers where people are actually going when they go to and from work. You just walk us through that for a second.
Okay, well, I think another valuable point that I kind of left off was all of the voting areas that we have chosen was already precinct locations. So we chose nowhere new. This is places that people already felt comfortable with, had already been voting to. Some of the locations that we are not using are, I think the shortest amount is half of them all. And then I think the longest was like 8 to 7. But if you take a map and all the locations that we took away from voting center here to the one that we're not using to the other one, you're talking about 6-7 miles. And that a lot of these areas may not have homes from point A to B because of the mountains and the way that we are. All of our locations, as far as like our coal miners, they're easier access for them to get to, because a lot of our people live in one part of the county and they work on the other county, or they have to drive out of the county just to get to work. So this allows them to stop at any point that's convenient for them, whether it's close to work or on their way out to vote, and give them that opportunity to not have to take off work, not to leave early, take their lunch break and run out and vote and get in and out. It doesn't restrict them to that one location. And because, you know, just in the center of Harlan, to go to one voting center still might take 45, or the precinct might take 45 minutes, to where now it makes it easier for them to vote, that they can go and it only takes 5 minutes. So I mean, that's my big thing, is making it easier for Harlan to vote, give them that opportunity.
Okay. Anyone else?
If I may
Mhm.
add one
Yeah.
thing that actually doesn't mind, one of the things when I was looking again, and I talked to you and to your deputy Cheryl about better defining the lines around Harlan County, I think that helped, because the map, you know, was a little bit deceptive between where Bell County backs up, and you can see those lines better, that it made it easier to see where those vote centers were in relation to getting across county lines, where many of the people of Harlan County live across county lines.
Yes.
Work across county.
Well, even at that, when you talk about Bell County line, you actually have to leave Harlan, go through Bell County and get into Harlan again, just to reach one of our communities. Of course, we kept that as an area to, and we made them all voting centers. There was no confusion, just because this is a big change.
Okay, hearing nothing else, I think we're all set. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for
Appreciate the
coming up.
opportunity.
Henderson. Welcome back, Renisa.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to thank the secretary and all of the board members and State Board of Election staff for allowing us to come and talk today. I basically, in a nutshell, my plan from the previous election was I added a location, and I moved a location from an area or a location that had parking issues to a brand new elementary school that was just built last year. And it's located a block away from the prior location to better serve the public in that area with parking and safety. So, and I just was coming here to make sure that, you know, you didn't have any other questions about my plan, and just kind of, you know, answer them if you do.
Okay, any questions? I think we're all set.
Okay.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
being here. Johnson County, do we have Johnson?
No, she sent something this morning, and I sent it out to everyone at 1:31, but
Okay. LaRue County. Lawrence County, Lewis County.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hello, everyone. My name's Leslie Collier, and I'm the clerk in Lewis County. So thanks for taking the time to have us, and I'll try to be brief. I've sent Karen a plan, and she forwarded that to the board members, and also talked to Secretary Adams on Tuesday for a while, explaining. Long story short, I guess condensing it, we kept the same plan as our May primary, but added extra print on demands and extra equipment in 2 of those locations. And the goal is to even add more for the primary. So we're always looking ahead. But I don't want to take too much time. So we are a little bit more prepared, but if you have any questions, I'll let you all.
A point I want to make real fast is that some of our clerks over the last couple of weeks have added a location or 2, but more so, some of them have added check-ins at existing locations. Because some of the bottlenecks that we saw last November, it wasn't because there weren't enough locations, it was just a bottleneck at the location itself in terms of check-ins. So I do think those don't really show up on a big chart of how many locations, how many precincts. Those are actually just as important. So thank you for that. Any questions? Okay, thanks a lot. I think McCracken is with us virtually, right?
yes.
Okay, we'll circle back. Is that okay? We'll come back to you.
Yes, that's fine.
Madison? Welcome.
So she had to tell him I was gonna speak. She had to do that. Because other people, they're just skipping over.
Jamie,
Some are skipping over this.
you need a mute. You need a mute. She still had Richard say it again.
Jamie, I think you're not muted.
No.
Hi, Jeff.
Oh, there you go.
Well, I'm Kenny Barger, Madison County Clerk. Kind of same thing the other clerk said, this is the same plan we use the primary. We added a location which has 400+ parking places, a gymnasium that's sits empty 99% of the time. It's right on the bypass, behind Toyota South, if anybody's familiar with that, on 4-lane bypass, extremely easy to get into. A few points I want to make. I've been dealing with this now for 7 years. I think we may have, other than Jimbo Berry, because he only had 4 precincts, he always had a phone center. They're all in one location that former director Jared Deering and I kind of started modeling this in the folk center in Berea. We combined our machines. Some things that aren't being talked about is because we're using these in a vote center and we're not limiting one machine per precinct, we add redundancy, a huge amount of redundancy into the process. Because if you have one machine per precinct of the scanner and that scanner goes dead, you're out of luck in that entire precinct until some technician gets there 30, 45 minutes later in Madison County. In Eastern Kentucky, it could be an hour and a half. No voting goes on. In the poll center model, scanner goes down, everybody sticks their ballot in the other scanner. We have to, I think, start to understand what our expectation of this process is, because it's brand new, we have no data, and what the public's expectation of our process is. I can have double the number of locations. If I can buy the equipment, if I can find the locations, I have them, I have to have the precinct officer working those locations. If everybody in Madison wants to go to one of them, they can. It's their choice. You can vote anywhere you want to in Madison County. So it cuts both ways. If you want to vote at the folk center, which is a problem we're having because it's been a precinct location for 25 years. If you want to vote at the folk center, we expect to stand in line. Because you're creating the line. It's not the process inside the building or the amount of equipment or the amount of people working. It's the voters that will not go to another location that is 1.5 miles away. That's a large church with 200 parking places and a completely open sanctuary with all the equipment that we can put in there. We have to start to understand and talk about this further instead of this back and forth and approving a plan and not approving a plan, because we don't understand what the parameters are we're trying to meet. We're using all the locations we possibly can in Madison County that we consider, the board considers to be a usable location. The amount of parking, the room inside the building, the voting room, which is required by statute, the room we're using, how far that room is from the nearest parking place and the furthest parking place. We have a college and a university in Madison County, and we don't have a single facility on any of those campuses that's usable as a voting center because of parking. Maybe I got on something off a little bit. If anybody's got any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer.
Okay, any questions?
I've got a couple, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Thank you, clerk, for the work you do and for the information you provided us. This is just really, I've had no concerns with your plan, but I did want to ask a couple, and I probably have this information, so I apologize. But can you tell me, in the last election prior to the vote center model, how many locations you had in Madison County?
16.
You had 16.
47 precincts, 16 locations.
Okay. And your previous election, you had no issues, et cetera, around voting or long lines of waiting?
In the primary that just happened in May?
Your last time you voted, yeah, in the primaries.
Yeah, the only problem we had was folks line at folk center so many people in Berea, so many people going to that location. And then our Madison County Library branch in Richmond, or the main library in Richmond, was chosen because of public transportation. Both bus routes for Richmond stop at that location. So if you don't have transportation, it's a very good place for you to come vote. We were slammed, and the library, if I were them, I would have kicked us out on the second day because we were slammed with, there's no parking, there's not much parking there. It's a rough place to get in and out of the vote, and there's another location 1 mile away with another 100 parking places, flat, easy to get in and out of. Again, it's about the voter and what the voter wants. We have given them complete freedom to do what they want. If they want to stand in line, great. If they don't, get in your car and drive another mile away and walk in and vote and walk back out.
So one final question, Mr. Chairman, if you'll.
Yeah.
So what's the plan this time to make sure that doesn't happen again?
That there aren't any lines at a certain location?
Yeah, I mean, you said you were slammed and have you done anything to offset that?
No, sir. I can't make the location any bigger. I can't create more parking at that location. We must have, especially the library, we must have that location because it's easy walkable distance from a lot of residents in town. And it's also meets those 2 bus routes stop there for Richmond. So if you don't have transportation, you can take public transportation, get there and vote. At the Folk Center, we need another location. We must have another location before next year in southern Madison County. We'll overload the locations we have in southern Madison County. And I've asked in several fiscal court meetings, I asked anybody I know from Berea, please help us find something. We're running out, we don't have enough locations in that part of the county for the next election coming. For this general, we'll be fine. For presidential, we'll struggle. But there's no way I can't, it's not the precinct model. I can't tell people where to go. So I can't control how many people go to a certain location. We're creating signage for this election coming that says, if there's a line here, here are the other locations where you can go vote. And hopefully they will go, get their vehicle and go to that other location versus standing in line or overloading a location where they probably shouldn't be.
I appreciate it. I think it is a matter of education and the more you do and the more you share with people about options. I think that's what I saw in Franklin County, and even election members were telling folks in line in Franklin County previously, you can go half a mile over or whatever. So I realize it's not easy. You can't fix all the problems, but education and making sure people know there's options, I think probably is one good thing to do as much as you can. Thanks again for the information.
Yeah, please.
I mean, I agree. Like I say, we don't have any data on this. We don't have much data on this model. And education of the voter is essential for this. We are continuing to do that with every mode possible. But we all know, we think about this 365 days a year. The voter thinks about it 2 times a year. So it's hard. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. It's hard to get this message out, but we're trying the best we can. I know everybody else is too. But to be reactionary to a complaint about a line being at a certain location when the voter can go to any other location in the county it's a little soon for that. I think we need to wait, have time to let things settle in, get people educated, let them understand the process, that they don't have to go to the same location they've gone to for 20 years. Then we'll start to build a model that we can work around and have real nuts and bolts requirements for each county.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thanks, guys. Marshall? So,
What they.
okay. Oldham? There.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Amy Alvey. I am somewhat of a new clerk. I was appointed in August of last year, so I've got about a year under my belt. Inherited the November 2022 general plan, and that's where we ran into problems. We only had 5 voting centers, but as everyone has said, that came up, the plan that was submitted for the general 2023 is the same plan that was used in May. We added 4 additional vote centers throughout the county. They were mainly concentrated in the areas where we had lines at the November general election. The 3-day no excuse early voting, that is at our community center, which is geographically almost dead center in the county. We have tons of parking. Everyone knows where it's at because that's where our community pool is as well. So 3-day no excuse has not been any issue. Again, we have 9 voting centers for election day. We have 123 workers right now. 76 of those are clerks that will be checking in voters at those 9 locations. I did move 1 location in the western portion of Oldham County that we had it at a church. We're moving it to the elementary school. It's at the entrance of about an 800 lot subdivision. So I'm working with the homeowners association to put it on their newsletter, and when they push things out to their members, that they know that that is now going to be a voting center, and it's also right at the Oldham Jefferson County lines. Hopefully that will pick up a lot of the commuters that are going into Jefferson County to work. The other 8 locations are the same that we had previously. They all worked out great. As Kenny had said, I will also have signage at all 9 locations on election day. I won't put it obviously at the front door, because once you get to the front door, you're not going to get on the line, but throughout the parking areas. So if there does get a line, it'll have all the other voting locations and their addresses. So if they don't want to wait in line, then they can go. But we also had at the November general, some of our election staff, they were actually going through and telling people, there's no wait 2 miles down the road, and sending them to the other locations. So that worked out good. I think a lot of it is voter education. We pushed postcards out to every household in Oldham County. So everybody got one for the May primary. Everyone will get one for the general. We are lucky enough to have, the county has 8 electronic message boards scattered throughout the county. So I work with our judge executive to put all the voting options and deadlines and things of that nature on the voting board, on the electronic message boards. We put notices in our local paper. We now have a local radio station in LaGrange. I've done interviews with them explaining the election process and where people can vote and how all that works. But other than that, my plan is still the same. Other than, relocating that 1 location. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Amy? Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Owsley? No,
I think there was communication. I think you mentioned communication about getting an emergency, plan to, since they have a single location.
yeah.
I haven't seen anything. I'm happy to follow up unless you all have seen
Anything you want to add on that, Heather?
And they're just having the 1 location. She didn't think she could have another building, and we were just asking her to think through like the Eastern Kentucky floods or the Western Kentucky tornadoes. If that center goes down, she needs to have a contingency plan so that people are able to vote.
And I understood from you that she was working on that.
She was talking to her judge about having generators in case she needed to have power to that location.
But you haven't heard anything definite.
We don't have anything that's like what we got from Russell that actually is an amended plan that adds something. It's still a back and forth at this point.
I'm happy that.
We understand that the law requires counties to have a contingency plan, and we understand this county does not, and that's a problem. I think the legislature needs to maybe address in the next session about making these things public and maybe some sort of penalty that's not done, but we just don't have one in this county, unfortunately.
We'll work that out.
Yeah.
I can probably go back to. So.
Russell?
So Patty wasn't able to be here today, and again, something just went out about 1 o'clock, and in the course of talking with her, we were Richard and I were able to work with her and with Hart InterCivic for her to have enough equipment to be able to open JBES. She did not. And don't get me wrong, it's not like they're ordering, she's not ordering 20, 25 machines. She's doing it for that one single precinct. And able to get that precinct open. She secured a location. She's going to make sure that it's ADA compliant with restroom, because it wasn't a problem, to have it there without some other pieces for her to be able to manage to get to that location and make it accessible for voters. And so I sent she sent me the SBE, the additional locations. She updated the map where that was on her map and provided a letter. And unfortunately, I apologize that I didn't get it out till she got it to me today, but I tried to get it out immediately. But she did say she wasn't able to be on today, but feels like now that she's accomplished and gotten the community of JBES, because of the distance around the lake is, where the issue was, a question about before. So, but she is able to do that. So just wanted to add that.
Okay, Scott, please. Move on up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Secretary, members of the board. I'm Rebecca Johnson, the Scott County Clerk. And I would start by saying, as has been voiced by several other clerks here today, that I'm somewhat confused about why the Scott County plan has been held from approval when this is the same plan that we presented for the 2023 primary. There have been no changes. And I might add to that, that prior to the 2023 primary, I sat down with my state legislator, and the result of that discussion was the addition of another precinct, which took our number to 12 currently. I say precinct, but replacing our 26 precincts, we would currently now have 12 vote centers. And in the near future, we have a satellite office that ground has been broken, and we're in expectation of that in 2025 for the completion of that facility. And we would also utilize that as a vote center. So that would take us to 13 vote center locations. And that would replace our 26 prior individual precinct. Some of those were multiple precinct locations, but there were 26 locations in total. So you can see that would put us right at 50% of our former locations. And this was agreeable to my legislator and myself and my Scott County Board of Elections. And so coming out of that discussion with that agreement, we moved forward. Our plan was passed. We had a successful 2023 primary. And we came out of that election without complaints about our election plan. So I've asked the question, I've indicated that I'm confused about why I'm here, but I'll go ahead and attempt to answer my own question. Because I received a communication from Secretary's office, a representative of Secretary of State's office, communicated with me right after the last meeting of this board that there had been many complaints that had come in from Scott County voters regarding the closure of two specific locations. When I asked how many constitutes many, and is there documentation of those calls, the answer was no. So without documentation of the specific complaints, which I might add, if those were a matter of priority, would have been very helpful to me and my County Board of Elections to have had that information to take into our discussions in reviewing and then approving a plan for the 2023 general. We have, however, since had conversations. We've actually had a special call meeting and taken up that discussion about those two specific locations. Now, I might just add here, I would suggest to you that rather than complaints, what came to me at a local level, I would describe more so as questions. And let me frame this for you. As a Board of Elections, we made the decision, which made sense for Scott County, to return in the 2022 election year to what we would call a hybrid of a single vote center location and our individual precinct locations. Now, that's following the 2020 crisis where all county clerks went to the vote center model. The Scott County voters were highly pleased with the vote center model. I, in fact, to this day, have not talked to a Republican, Democrat, or independent voter who has not voiced to me that they like the vote center model and hope to continue voting this way and appreciate everything that all of the advantages that this model has to offer, and are having better experiences today than they did in their individual precincts prior to the vote center model being introduced. But let me go back and say why we made a decision for Scott County to return to individual precincts and a vote center hybrid in the 2022 election year. This is because we did not have the technology to properly, we felt, accommodate all of the locations that we would need. For example, in one election, we had 181 ballot bases. It would mean producing and printing all of those ballot bases and having them at all of our multiple locations. So fast forward to print on demand, that was a total game changer. Now we could return to the vote center model that I fully believe Scott County voters prefer and best serves their interests as voters. So this is why we made the decision to return to the vote center model. We had a very successful 2023 primary, and again, was praised by voters for the experience that they had. But that's why I would frame those, what might be called complaints, as questions. Why are we not voting at this individual precinct in this election? And we gave explanations. We described the advantages and we described the change. And after providing that information, I feel very confident that at a local level, I've been able to resolve those concerns from some leaders of organizations or city elected officials, specifically the city of Sadieville. Those questions have been asked and answered, and I feel like those concerns have been resolved at this time. So back to those specific locations and back to the phone call I received from the Secretary's office. The staff member indicated to me that we would need to reopen specifically Sadieville City Clerk's office and Ed Davis Learning Center as vote centers or consolidated locations in order for our plan to be approved or to not be subject to veto. And so in taking that to my board and evaluating that, and I hope that all of the board members have received an email that was sent out to you providing information, supportive information about my concerns and my board's concerns in considering opening those locations as vote centers, because we very strongly and are unified as a bipartisan board in agreeing that those two locations do not meet the definition of a vote center. If you would look over the information I've provided, and I hope you received that, I sent out additional images today, which will show you, and I'll just touch on a couple of aspects of this, but as I say, I've provided more thorough supportive information. I'm glad to take or answer any questions, but I would specifically point out that the Sadieville City Clerk's office, first of all, does not have adequate space in the voting room. It's a space that we can utilize that I would estimate about 150 to 200 square feet. So if we cannot have multiple lines for voters, and if we cannot have many privacy booths, a voter who would assume that this is a vote center and choose to go to this location rather than the current voter vote center that serves the northern part of the county, which is about a 5 minutes drive away. I think it's exactly 6.6 miles away. If left to choose between those two locations, at Northern Elementary, they would find efficient voting and they would find a safe experience. If they were to go to Sadieville City Clerk's office and we were to open that and call that a vote center, they might potentially find a long line because that facility can only accommodate one line for voters. It just does not have sufficient room in the facility. Also, they might be waiting behind a handful of voters at most that could be voting at one singular time, as opposed to our elementary school that has the spacious, obviously, the rooms that provide the space for that, like a gymnasium or cafeteria. Also, the parking is an issue. If you look at the images I sent today, you will see that on the same side of the street as the Sadieville City Clerk's office, there are 2 signs posted that says no parking. And in fact, even if I were to take paint and temporarily paint parking spaces, I would literally be painting handicapped spaces adjacent to the building on the same side of the main thoroughfare, the main street, passing this facility. I would literally be painting those spaces on the street. So there just is no parking immediately adjacent to the building. There is no parking unless the main street is crossed to access parking that is what I would consider not an acceptable distance. It certainly would not meet ADA compliance. Beyond that, I don't think it would be a safe experience to have this be or serve as a vote center. I'll also touch on the Ed Davis Learning Center, and here I would point out similar issues. The voting room is not sufficient to meet the definition of a vote center, neither is the parking. The lane entering the facility is 1 lane, so cars coming in would have to use the same lane that cars exiting the facility would have to utilize to get to the road. So there's the space issue, there's the parking issue, but if you'll notice in the images that I sent today, you can see that the Ed Davis Learning Center is 1.7 miles from the closest vote center and is also surrounded by 9 vote centers. There are 3 additional vote centers that serve our voters that live further in the county that are outside of the city limits. But there are actually 9 vote centers surrounding Ed Davis Learning Center. The closest is 1.7 miles away. The furthest of those 9 is 3.4 miles away. So if I could also just attach that to the consideration of the use of resources. Is that justified when we have such good coverage as I've shown here surrounding the Ed Davis Learning Center? Regarding the Sadieville City Clerk's office, again, I think the specific complaint was that a voter may have to travel 20 minutes to get to the current vote center at Northern Elementary. If you'll keep in mind, I said that location is now about 5 minutes from the location that was previously used as an individual precinct. So I would suggest to you that if that voter is traveling 20 minutes to get to that vote center, they were already traveling about 15 because they choose to live in the rural part of Scott County. And we only have so many public facilities that we can use and only so many that clearly meet the definition of a vote center. And our board, again, is unified, and we feel that we would be using poor judgment to open these facilities and call them vote centers when voters that might choose those facilities, assuming they can accommodate a vote center as our other 12 locations currently do, that they might actually have a bad voting experience on election day. And I would just add to this that voters previously had 1 location to vote at on election day in person. That changed to 2 when we had the hybrid. Now they have 12. And I might also add that Scott County's number of registered voters is right at about 45,000. And we have 12 locations that would serve those voters. So I think the numbers speak for themselves, that is very thorough coverage for Scott County. And I would just end with a question, and to any board members that may have the same concerns about the closure of those 2 locations. But specifically, Mr. Secretary, I would ask what you feel, how you feel Scott County would benefit from opening those 2 facilities with the information I've provided here today. And knowing that Scott County has a history of successful elections, as we did in the 2023 primary with the same plan, and that our bipartisan board is unanimously in favor of this plan, and we stand by it. I would just ask what you think that we would benefit from the opening of these 2 locations. Just one more comment before I would turn that question to you. I have checked with our vendor because, as I said, this would take a lot of resources to open 2 locations, and our vendor is already in the process of, is processing the order that we have in place. We're forward thinking in having the equipment for that 13th vote center, which will ultimately be at our satellite location, our satellite office, which is expected for 2025. That equipment is already on order to establish a single vote center. My vendor has most recently indicated to me that equipment to fulfill that order will not be available until December. So I would always, of course, before considering a plan, you have to consider if you have the resources to be able to establish that. And so I would just mention that as well. It could be very problematic to be able to equip 2 locations in addition to the 12 that we currently have.
Okay, any questions for Rebecca?
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you, Rebecca, because the photos that you provided today, I found to be very helpful. Parking is a big deal, and especially if you've got to cross a road, we've had issues with that in the past. So I just really appreciate the thoughtfulness that you put into providing the information to the board today. And I think it's worth noting, I read every plan. I look through all the detail. I try to be as thorough as possible. And I did note, you've got about 45,000 voters and 12 vote centers. And it looks to me like Hardin County has about 87,000 voters and 12 vote centers. So it looked pretty well covered to me, but I definitely wanted to hear what you had to say about these 2 locations. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come and share that with us.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, thanks a lot. We're gonna, I think I saw Lynette on. Yeah. So Lynette, if it's okay, we're gonna let Sandy go first because she's here. Is that all right? And we'll come back to y'all. Okay.
Good afternoon, Secretary Legislation. Board members, thank you for having me along to speak today. The Woodford County voting plan that was unanimously voted upon by our County Board of Elections, 2 members of whom happen to be with me today, and Henry Duncan and Sheriff Wilhoit. We decided to include the same 4 voting centers that we've had in the past. Falling Springs, which is located in the center of the county, Northside Elementary Voting Center in Midway, the only other city in the county, Millville Voting Center and None Such Voting Center, both of which are rural communities in this county, and they have had their own schools in the past. They have very strong community values, so that was a very logical choice to leave those 2 in there as well. The most important part that I would like to make today is to let everyone know that our county has successful elections. If I may define successful, I would like to stress that successful equates to administering an election without any violations or voter complaints. Our county has had no delays in moving voters through the lines. Our voting centers have ample parking with both golf carts to move voters from our large parking lot over in Bowling Springs to the door. And we have command centers that are staffed by my deputies who are proficient with the use of the voting registration system that we refer to as the VRS. By the use of having a command center at each of the voting centers, we ask the voter to step out of the check-in line and go over to the command center where we have the VRS to check the status of that voter. So the subsequent voters in line are able to quickly move through to receive their ballot. This process strongly attributes to the speed that we were able to get a voter in and out of our voting center. Our general election of 22, we had 11,443 voters, the highest turnout since I have been in office. We had the same voting plan that is now presented before you today because we did not experience any problems. Just as I stated before, and November of 22 was absolutely the true test. On behalf of this Board of Elections, I can assure you that if any part of this plan needed to be corrected or amended in any way, it would have certainly been changed because nobody wants a successful election more than we do for our county. We take our job gravely serious, and that is why our elections are successful. I have been asked the number of voter turnout in the precincts that border the Fayette County line. I did a comparison for these precincts from the comparable election of the primary of 2019 to the primary of 2023. The percent of turnout for G101, which is Sycamore Firehouse, was 7% of total votes in 2019 and 6% in 2023. The percent of turnout for G102, that's Huntertown School, 3 miles from Bowling Springs, was 6% of total votes in 19 and 8% in 23. The reason I'm giving these precinct comparisons is because of the discussion I have had with Secretary Adams's office that a voting center needs to be added near the Fayette County line, and these are the precincts that are nearest. As I stated in my letter to you, I have been denied the use of the 2 churches that were suggested there over on Lexington Road. At the time I submitted our County Board of Elections letter to Karen Sellers and all of you members of the State Board of Elections, I reported that our county did not have voting machines to equip a 5th voting center. This information was given to you based on what I was told by Harp Enterprises when I asked when our voting machines that are on order would be delivered. I was informed by Karen Sellers yesterday afternoon that Harp was able to work out a solution with the manufacturer for another county and that they may be able to do the same for our county. When I talked to Hart late yesterday afternoon, I was told that they would try to get Hart Intercivic to advance 2 of the 7 machines that we have had on order from their immediate production line. I just want to retract that information that I gave previously and give this most recent update. The fact remains there is still no location near the Fayette County line, and the issue of not having any more deputies in my office to staff a 5th command center at a new voting center would be very detrimental. With this voting machine issue being the only update I have, I respectfully ask that you consider the existing plan that we know is functional, effective, and proven to work for our county. If you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer any.
If you don't mind, before I keep turning over, do you all have anything that you'd like to add? No. Okay.
I'll say this, I live in the Sycamore subdivision, which is the largest subdivision east of Versailles. And most of my neighbors do work in Lexington. But I've done some inquiry of my folks. I have no complaints about going over to the Fallen Springs, which so many of them go there for exercise and all that. Then get on the Bluegrass Parkway and be there in 5 minutes. So I have not heard any complaints. Contrary, I've heard a lot of positives about the access to that large voting center, which I don't know, what do we have, about nine stations in there that support these people. So it's been positive.
Thanks. Any questions for Sandy or her board?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to just tell you that I am, of course, a native of Woodford County. I've lived there all my life. We have had excellent elections. We've had excellent elections since Sandy has been the clerk. Her plans have worked beautifully. I'm not aware of any complaints about those plans. We've had smooth elections, and we've had smooth elections when the turnout was a whole lot higher than the one that we expect now, using essentially the same plan. So based on all of that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Woodford County plan.
So I'd like to get through the clerks that are here virtually. So here's what I'd like to do, Member Gendler, if we can we finish with all the clerks, and then when we come back and take either county by county motions or a combined motion, is that okay with you?
I would rather go ahead and deal with this right now if I could get a second.
Second.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Do we have any discussion?
I was going to actually make some comments or ask some questions. I know there's been a lot of conversation back and forth, and I appreciate Clerk Jones being here today. I think by and large, we've always heard positive things out of Woodford County. Things have worked pretty well. I originally was prepared to actually support the plan as it was presented. I did make the decision to go to Woodford County and to drive through the area to visit the Falling Springs precinct, which I compliment you on because I think it is a beautiful facility. I think it is a good setup. I appreciate that you have golf carts there to transport voters because it is quite a distance from the parking lot to the front door. And it's a little bit of a distance, once you get inside, but it's very manageable. I raised some issues, and I think you've had some conversations with Karen Sellers about the parking situation at Nonesuch, and I appreciate you being willing to address that, because as I understand it, I don't think it's been necessarily submitted to the board, but you were willing to put a golf cart to help transport the voters from the parking area in Nonesuch. Is that correct?
Yes, we'll be happy to do that.
And I appreciate that, because it's just, it's probably not necessarily the best situation, but we probably have seen worse situations also. So just anything to, be willing to assist the voters in those areas, I think is very beneficial. And I don't, not being a resident of Woodford County, the road there doesn't look like it's super busy, but, I'm not positive, but I do have a little concern about even the golf carts crossing the road there with the voters. So I don't know if it makes sense to have some traffic control. And again, I'm not familiar with the amount of traffic that's on that road. So maybe it isn't necessary. I just don't want to see someone injured, trying to cross the road to get to the polling location. So I just appreciate if you talk to staff and hopefully address that if, people feel like that's necessary. I additionally would like to see an additional voting center after driving through the county on that eastern side. I know you've worked really hard trying to make some phone calls to identify that. And I appreciate you took the time at our last meeting to come on. And I know at that time you pledged to us that for the 2024 election, you would open a location over there. So I really, really appreciate that. I know identifying the location is probably your biggest challenge at that point. It has come to my attention that maybe there is a location there at the where the old Kroger building was that may be owned by the city. And if I have bad information, feel free to correct me, because I just don't know. But that could potentially, I know it's not as far out as the Fayette County line, but I do think getting something in that direction would be helpful. So that's kind of my request at this point. I'd like possibly to even defer your plan so that we can continue the conversations to try to build some consensus, because we all, no matter how we view this, every member of this board just wants you to be successful. I mean, we want all of our elections everywhere to be successful, and we want our voters to have as maximum access as they can. And we have a lot of counties that are similar to your size who have significantly more voting locations. So anything we can do to try to help maximize that, I just think that's a win for everybody.
Well, the track, if I may respond to that, the track record has been very clearly that we have had successful elections in Woodford County, and there's no reason to believe that we won't this time. We have a wonderful Board of Elections and we have good poll workers, and it has gone about as smoothly as an election can go. And I think it would be a mistake to try to micromanage this. I think we ought to defer to people with local knowledge. And I can tell you that the local knowledge is substantial in this case. And I think it's very important that we do that, particularly if we don't have any priors, in any prior problems that we've had to deal with. And in this case, we don't have any prior problem. And we're trying to do something with the Woodford County plan other than what the clerk and the board want to do. The local board is trying to fix a problem where there isn't one.
Well, I mean, there were some lines in 2022, to my understanding, they weren't significantly long lines, what we have seen in some other areas. But every area that we had lines in, we have sought to try to address those needs. And as I've explained to the people that have even called me to complain about the Woodford plan, I explained to them, putting another location over here may fix the problem, but you may end up with lines in a different location than where you started. It's not a magic pill. We are trying to identify and fix and make it work. So, I'm not saying that putting the other location is just going to, eliminate a line somewhere else necessarily. These are voter choices, and we're bound by, the voters making those choices, and we have to adapt accordingly. But I do believe there is some evidence to support us looking at another location. And I'd love to work with every member of this board and the clerk to try to make that happen. Since she's already pledged to do it in 2024, I think doing it this cycle might give her a good dry run. Because 2024, we're going to see significantly more voters. And I just don't want her to have that issue when we get to that point.
Member Skolnick, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's worth taking a pause and just, I'm only speaking for me. I'm not speaking for the rest of the board, but saying kind of what I view at least my role to be in this. I congratulate Woodford County on having good elections. I believe everything that the clerk has told us, and I believe everybody is trying to do the best they can, but we're also tasked with evaluating each of these plans, not in a stack of who had a good election the last time and who had a problem, but evaluating each independently for each race. And, I'm from Jefferson County, and I probably asked more questions of the Jefferson County clerk when we were looking at plans when I had concerns about the number of locations. And so I just think it's important, obviously we have to defer, and I believe in small government where we look to the people who live there, and in a lot of cases they know best. But for us to do our job, I think these kinds of questions are not only appropriate, but they're required. And I just want to say to all the clerks that I know it's frustrating if your plan was held over, but I think we're going to find that most and maybe all ultimately when we get done get approved. It's not that there was something necessarily wrong with it. It's just that somebody or somebody's on the board had questions, and we owe it to the public to do our job to ask those questions, because we don't get to say later that we had them but we didn't ask them. And so we're all in this together, and I think everybody is trying to get to the same place. But I just want to say that I think it's appropriate to ask the questions. And even though we do largely want to defer, we're not doing our job if we're not inquiring. So I just thought this was a good time to at least share what I view my role to be here. I don't want to speak for the other members, but I think most people, if not everyone, agrees with that.
I certainly agree with it.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We've had discussion. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Here, sorry, this is hard to do when you're not here. So Member Johnson?
Aye.
Member Lane?
Aye.
Member Chandler?
Aye.
And then do we have any other ayes? Do we have any?
Aye.
Member Brown is an aye?
Yes.
Okay, let me take a look here. And then do we have any nays?
Nay.
Rangers?
Nay for Skolnick, but I'd like to explain my vote. I would be in favor of holding over and trying to open another venue with Brangers, so nay.
Member Sears?
And I will say nay as well, only because I am very pro clerk. I believe that the clerks know their areas better than anybody else. But at any time there's ever a question from anyone, I think we have to be open to discussion. And I would be in favor of table. I'm not necessarily against the plan, but because there are some concerns with others that are familiar with that plan and with that area, I am definitely open to table that and see if we can't come to a consensus 100%.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that brings us back around to the counties that are on virtually. I see we have Warren.
Mr. Chairman,
No.
I believe the plan was approved. Do I understand that the plan was approved?
Woodford was approved, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. So we've gone through all, I think, did we get everyone that's here? They wanted to speak, did we get everyone who's here personally? Okay. So we have, I think, 3 clerks that are on virtually, if I counted correctly. We have Bullitt and McCracken and Warren. Is there anyone else? Am I missing anybody?
Bullet, did you say, I'm sorry.
Bullitt, McCracken, and Warren.
And, but.
Oh, we have Boone.
but
Oh, okay.
yes, Stacy Atkins.
Oh, my mistake. I'm so sorry. Okay, well, Stacy, on behalf of Boone County, would you like to offer any remarks?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Just to reiterate, the plan is different in that we try to be proactive and revisit our locations for ADA compliance because we did receive some complaints from voters in a few of those locations. And in doing that, several of our locations that we did review failed. So we had to move them because they were not ADA compliant. So those were the changes that we made to the plan that differ from the previous election. We had to consolidate a few locations. Any of those instances still convenient to later and larger facilities than they were in before. So I just wanted to reiterate that was the reason for our changes. And I'm open to any questions anybody has.
Okay, thank you. Your internet connection is a little spotty. If we lose you or you lose us, could you call in the number?
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Okay, any questions for Stacy? Member Johnson.
Stacy, thank you so much. I hope you can hear me okay. I realize the significant issues that are caused by not having ADA buildings to utilize. I would appreciate just a real brief explanation, and maybe you've answered it, but going from 53 to 48. So looking at it, you have 15 consolidated locations and 33 standalone.
Yes.
None of those are vote center models?
None.
Okay. And so it's a true reduction. It's not a combined, taking those other 5 and combining them into some other, like a part of the consolidated locations. They're just absolutely reduced from 53 to 48.
Yes, we just had to put the consolidated locations, all but one of those contain 2 precincts. So they're just 2 precincts in the same location. And then our 15th consolidated location has 3, but that's been a couple elections ago that we moved that one. So the 6 locations that we did move into facilities with other precincts, they're still standalone precincts. We'll just have more equipment in those places to accommodate.
So maybe I'm not asking my question right, or maybe I'm not hearing your answer right. So the 5 locations that were reduced have been assumed within one of the other locations. Is that what I'm understanding? I mean, it's, since they're individual precincts and there's not a vote center model, they are still there, but they're not in the location they were previously. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Sorry to be so dense. I just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments on Boone County? Okay, thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
So who's next alphabetically? Is that Bullet, I guess? We still have Bullet with us. Hi, Kristen. I think you're still on mute. If you can adjust that for us. If you can't get that to work, we'll have you just call in. That's okay. Do you have the number?
Tell her it's on the email.
It's on your email. It might be in your invitation. But...
It's on the email. She got it.
Okay. If you don't call us, we'll call you and we'll loop you in somehow. Okay. Okay. All right. We'll see you in just a bit. Let's see, McCracken. I think you're next, Jamie.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I, like some of the other clerks, was taken back when I found out my election plan was up for review because it had not changed. After the same afternoon, a representative from Secretary Adams' office reached out to me and asked if we could have another early voting center for early voting. And I explained the reasons that we could not. And after she said that she completely understood, but I just want to go over my numbers. Early voting in the May primary, we had only 399 early voters. And for the 2022 general election, we had less than 1,000 early voters. But I did tell her that I would be fine with trying it for the May primary next year, given the right equipment. We've got some on order, but right now it wasn't feasible for us to do that because of the numbers and the equipment that we have. We don't have any print on demands, but we do have 28 on order.
Okay. Yeah. Anything for Jamie? Jamie, you know this because we corresponded. My concern with McCracken was not really for election day. I think it's robust enough. It was really more about the early voting because I grew up there and I registered to vote at your office when I turned 18. I turned 18 on a Sunday. I had to wait a whole other day, but I registered that next day. It's a fairly small space. It's a fairly small footprint, so I was concerned it wouldn't be adequate for the early voting. I do expect we're going to have more voters in November than we had in May. We always do. 2 or 3 times as many people will be voting. And so that was the basis of my concern. It was having a second early voting location more so than the election day representation. But I do understand the situation you have. I do certainly hope to see at least one more location for next year, but I certainly understand where you're coming from.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Okay. Anything else for Jamie? Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So I think we just, Kristen, did you manage to get volume?
I think, can you hear me?
Oh, we sure can.
All right, good. Hello, everybody. First of all, I just want to apologize. Kevin is not here today to be available for the meeting. I believe you all have received a letter from him. If you all have any questions, I will try my best to answer. I'm just one of his deputies. So we'll go from there, but I appreciate y'all being here and helping us out.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to the members, but I will just add, I had a really good conversation with Kevin about November of 2022 and this plan and specific changes that were made. Do you want to just address those real briefly for us?
I'm not sure exactly what he put in the letter. We're just, trying to get, better locations, better parking. you know, we have basically the same amount of check-ins, the same amount of scanners, everything like that we had in the May and in the, you know, actually in the May. We're just, you know, trying to get everybody out there and mainly just trying to get everybody to know where to go and just, you know, teaching is the thing. It's just trying to get them to get where they need to be. That's, you know, we try to send out postcards to everyone and just trying to get them to go where they need to go. And that's just the difficulties, but I'm not sure exactly what all he had said.
I'm asking about a contrast with last November, not with May.
Oh, in November.
In
Okay.
May, you're not going to have lines, but compared to November, I'm just trying to compare apples and apples. If you could walk us through a little bit.
Okay. More locations. I mean, we've got more locations this time and more check-ins, more scanners. You know, in November, I think we only had 4. Now we have 8. And they're all vote centers. So anybody can go anywhere to get checked in. And we're just hoping that, you know, with these more locations that will help with that. I mean, honestly, you know, most people loved the vote center, even in November. They loved it. They really didn't have, you know, the lines. And I think everybody had that. But for the most part, everybody was like, I love the vote centers. We love the vote centers. So yeah, just getting, you know, we've got more locations now, more check-ins, more scanners. So we're hoping that everything goes as smooth, you know, so.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you, Kristen. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all.
So I think we only have Warren left. Is that right? Okay, Lynette, floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you all for allowing me to Zoom. We have something going on in our office today that I did not want to miss, but I did kind of want to go over our plan with everyone. I know we sent you quite a bit of information. I do apologize. We had lots of graphs and maps and literature for you to read on. There have been some concerns about our vote plan. We feel it's very good. In 2022, we had 8 centers. In 2023, the primary, we added 3 more. For this coming election, we're adding another location. We're also providing transportation to our downtown locations. We have 2 downtown locations, and then we have, of course, a total of 11. 12 now that we're adding this one, provided everything gets approved. And we have not had lines. Our vote centers are very large. We have anywhere, most average, we have 12 check-in clerks. We have poll stars. It can vote 50 to 60 people at one time can be filling out a ballot. We have more early vote centers than probably any county. They're all very large. That's why we have I think we have a larger, if you can look at some of the totals that we sent you, we have more early voting turnout than a lot of the larger counties, such as Kenton and Boone. We've kind of checked. So more of our people do vote early, or at least we would like to see more turnout, but we have a large voter turnout. I think, Secretary, the other day when you were giving your percentages of what you like to see per vote center, I think the number here was like 3,800. That's when you're dividing by election day in your centers. But we had a 25% early voting turnout that you would need to take those voters away. So actually that brought us down to like 2,800 per vote center. And now we're adding an additional location. So, and with our intentions, we're adding, so we would have 14 for next year. We have 3 additional locations that we're wanting to add. In a smaller location, we're going to combine it into the larger. So we would have a total of 14 for next year.
Okay, thank you. Any members have questions for Lynette?
Mr. Secretary, I'd like to comment that I did have extended telephone conference with Lynette after our last board meeting, and she brought me up to speed on a number of the things that she's pointed out in the letter.
Okay. Thank you, Member Brown. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Lynette.
Thank you all.
So we've heard from all the clerks and we've asked our very good questions, and I think we're in a position now, if there's a motion on the floor on the other plans. I guess we could take them individually or we can take them as a group, whatever is your pleasure. Probably take them as a group, but.
Secretary Adams,
Yeah.
I kind of feel like we need to pull Owsley and hold on to it to have you all, state board staff, secretary staff to get with that clerk on that contingency plan. It's very important that they have that in place. They may be working on it. It sounds to me like the communication is such that we're not really sure where that stands. So I think, getting back with them to get that. I know Karen has made the comment to me that she's actually driven to Owsley County a few times when she struggled to make contact. So I know the communication sometimes is not as great as we would like. But I think I'd like to maybe defer. I don't know what the appropriate motion to have you all work together, reach out to see if we can't just get that contingency plan in place.
So if I could respond, Member Brangers, this is the plan that most concerns me. Having just one place to vote and no backup is a real point of concern. This is a point of concern that I've raised with that clerk every single election since I've been in office. Because every election since I got here, that's been the case. I've never been comfortable with this. I think we have maybe a strategic question to ask and answer, which is it better to just not approve it? Or is it better to approve it and then have me be able to veto if they don't get back to us imminently with a backup plan? Logistically, it might be better if the members approve it. So if they fix it, we actually have well, I guess you'd be approving the plan in the old version, we get a new version. So I want to find a way for y'all to be able to approve a new version. I don't want to get too complicated here. I guess what I'm thinking out loud here is it better if you send it to me and we use veto as leverage, or is it better if you just don't approve it?
Well, I mean, based upon the way you just stated it there, if I'm hearing correctly, it seems to me if we vote on it, we're voting on it as it has been submitted, not with the contingency. And so, I mean, I'm hoping, giving some benefit of the doubt, hoping that they are working on a contingency plan, but it sounds like nobody is 100% sure if that is the case. So that's why I'm kind of suggesting maybe we table that one and come back to it in hopes that your office and the state board staff can hopefully get that in place.
I don't want to put you all on the spot and vote for something that you're not comfortable with, that I'm not comfortable with. But I don't think legally there's a problem if you pass a plan and then they augment it and you didn't approve the augmentation, because only a reduction requires of the board. So I'm not going to try to talk you out of tabling it if that's what you want to do. But I do think if you table it, at some point we have to come back in another special meeting and vote on it. It's the only issue I see.
Let me ask a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
If it's passed as is, and if you choose for whatever reason not to veto it, and the plan changes, does it not require an action of this board?
My reading of the law, and I welcome Taylor if he disagrees, is approval is only required to reduce locations. And we've actually had in the past situations where they add a location after the board approved the plan. So I don't think they need permission to add anything. They only need permission to retract something. Do you?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, could we set, I don't know. I'd like to see, a contingency plan on there. I think it's really important. And so I'm not sure I feel comfortable passing it without it, in hopes that they are working on it. So I'm kind of like, do we pass it? Do we pass it with like a deadline of, they have to have it within 10 days? I mean, I think those are potential options. I'd be open to what the other members think about it. I'm just a little uncomfortable passing it, knowing they need to have a contingency plan in place.
So you could pass it, and then the way the reg reads that if at any time it's found to be deficient, you can ask for a resubmission. So if you want to pass it conditioned on that the plan will be supplemented by X date, and if it's not, then you can use the reg to say, okay, we want a resubmission of the plan.
So what you're saying is we could go ahead and pass it with a contingency, or with a clause basically in our motion that says we're passing it contingent upon them having that submitted within 10 days? Is that what I understand?
Yeah, whatever time period you all would. And then if it's not, then I think our next board meeting is on the 19th, or if we, even if we needed a special, we could call, for a revote on it based on the fact that it's deficient or incomplete is what it actually says, that if the petition is found to be deficient or incomplete, we can ask for a resubmission. So the completeness of it is conditioned on having the additional information.
Right. Okay. And I would be comfortable if we put a time frame on it. I know, everybody's got a lot on their plate and coming back for another meeting, but if we came back for one county, it would be a short meeting. I hate to do that to everybody, but I just want to make sure we get it right. So you need me to make a motion?
Make that motion? Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve it and we give Owsley County 10 days to submit a contingency plan.
I'll second that
I
motion.
will too. Okay, go ahead, Ben.
Okay.
Now, are we approving all 22?
This is just Owsley.
Owsley.
Okay,
Yeah.
just Owsley.
So the motion from Member Brangers and seconded is that provisionally the board approves Owsley County's plan as submitted, but with the contingency that within 10 days, they produce a contingency plan. Did I say that right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
If there's gonna be days, I need to take some roll call here. Excuse me a second. So we had Brangers. I assume you voted for your own motion. We had Member Brangers, we had Member Johnson. We had Member Chandler,
Member Lane.
Member Lane. Any other ayes that I missed?
Aye, I'm okay.
Member Brown, Skolnick. Oh, that was unanimous. All right, never mind. Okay, that passes 7-0. It's hard to tell on the audio. Okay, so Owsley's approved with contingency. Are there any other motions on other plans?
I'm not going to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, on any other plans, but there are two plans that I'm probably going to vote no on for various reasons. I would ask that Warren County and Christian County be pulled from the rest of the group, and then I'm fine voting on the others as a group.
Do we want to take these in groups? Do we want to have I'm sorry, what you said, what were the two, Warren and Christian?
Yes.
Have a Warren and Christian, and then any others is one group, and then all the other counties that are not in that group and the other group. I want to do it as efficiently as possible. Is there any other member that does not support any particular plan?
Mr. Secretary, I was just going to ask you,
Yeah.
I think as board members, we've kind of put out where we have some questions, issues, et cetera. Are there any of them that you have additional questions or concerns about? I know we've kind of discussed Owsley. I know you, I think, share those concerns, but are there any others that you have additional concerns?
The biggest concerns I had, and I'm not going to pick on anybody, but the counties where we had lines last fall, those are the ones that I've spent most of my time directly engaging with the clerks and folks on the ground and just learning more about those communities and what was done to improve them. I have confidence in Bullock's plan. I feel really good about it. I feel really good about Oldham's plan. And I'll just be blunt about it. I didn't feel that comfortable a year ago. But I think they've listened and I think they've worked with us in good faith. And I feel just a lot better about those. So the ones that I was the most concerned about now I actually feel pretty good about.
And I'm sorry, did you say which ones you still have issues with?
So I did get some new information today from Sandy and from Rebecca. I do want to look at what they sent. I haven't had a chance to do that. Some of my concerns have been addressed, and I think they've raised legitimate questions about positions counter to theirs. So I'll certainly go through all that. I don't have any firm decisions against any at this point, other than Owsley. And again, not to pick on Owsley, but it's a recurring problem, and I feel like they're not in compliance with the law. Member Bringers, do you want to? I think you didn't actually have a motion on the floor, but you were pretty close. Or did I misunderstand you? No, I'm sorry, Member Johnson. I'm sorry. So sorry. So do we want to take a vote on all the plans but Christian and Warren?
I'll make a motion to approve all of the plans other than Christian and Warren.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion?
Are there any other counties that anybody else has concerns with? Because again, going back to what I stated earlier when we were talking about the other plan, I'm open to tabling anything if anybody has concerns with the plan submitted. But you know, as Jerry, you just mentioned 2 counties, but we had 22, if I'm not mistaken, on the list. So are there any other concerns with any of those other counties?
I never raised any concerns, Dwight, with any of the other counties, and I don't have any after reviewing them again, so. But I don't know about other members.
Let me just read real fast the counties that are in this motion, just so we're all on the same page. That would be Boone. So this motion is to approve Boone, Bullitt, Carter, Davis, Grayson, Greenup, Harlan, Henderson, Johnson, LaRue, Lawrence, Lewis, McCracken, Madison, Marshall, Oldham, Russell, and Scott. Did I get that right? I think I did. So the motion is to approve however many counties that is. This 22 minus Owsley, minus Warren, minus Christian, so that should be 19. And it was that motion seconded? I think it was. So we're in discussion. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, about, I heard some concern from you about Scott County and Woodford. Are you, I want to understand the nature of a veto that you might exercise. As I understand it, we've never had that before, and I'm not aware of any regs in place that govern that process. So what is the process that is followed relative to a veto? Do you veto, and if you do exercise a veto, do you veto it in one of these public meetings? Do you, how does that work? I think in order for a veto to be utilized, there ought to be some process for it. I mean, what would happen, for instance, if you decided to veto one of these plans the day before the election?
I don't have any law to cite that you're not already familiar with. There's no to your point, there's no regulations or case law on this. It's a new statute. So I don't really have anything to point you to that you're not already aware of from the legislation.
Well, do we need to adopt some regulations that govern the veto?
I don't know that the board has constitutional authority to regulate a constitutional officer and his acts under the law. So I think that you all have authority under the Constitution to come up with a process of your own in terms of responding to it. I don't know that you could regulate the veto any more than the legislature could regulate the governor's veto.
So what you're saying is that you can veto anything, in your view, you can veto anything that this board does in terms of approving these plans at any time that you so choose.
I don't,
Up to and including the day of the election.
are you asking a hypothetical or asking what I would actually do?
Well, I'm asking does the law allow you to veto these plans up to the election?
I guess in theory it does, but I wouldn't do that.
Well, we
I don't
can't
think it's in the
be sure
interest
of
of the
that.
Secretary of State to disrupt the election, especially when it's on the ballot. So,
Well, I would think not.
Me,
I think member Skolnick wants to say something.
Yeah,
I'd love
I
to
just,
talk about the motion, but go ahead.
yeah, I guess I just have a question. I mean, I think it's worth just discussing what would happen mechanically if you did exercise a veto. Would we be, I mean, I don't know the answer to this and I apologize, but we would have, I guess, the responsibility then to potentially take a vote either to, you know, overturn the veto, or if there weren't enough votes, the veto would stand. How does a special meeting of our board get called? Does any board member have the ability to do that? Would you do that in connection with exercising a veto? While we're all here, I don't know whether you're going to exercise one or not, but it would be good, I think, just to understand how it would play out.
That's what I'm trying to get at too. Just in the furtherance of the interest of smooth elections and having a process that we all understand.
Yeah, I think, Member Chandler, the subtext of your comments is you're asking if I would exercise a pocket veto. The governor has the power and has used the power to veto legislation when the legislature is out of session. It can't come back and override it, right? Maybe every governor does that. This governor's done it quite a bit. I would not do that. I would not just veto something and then have no corrective process in place and then create disruption. I think it's very possible we'll have to come back anyway because of Owsley. But I'm happy to say that if it comes down to, I don't want to give a chicken, I'll put it that way. I want to give a chicken between me and you all about a county plan and leaving the county clerk in the lurch. I want perfect clarity by the 11th of September when they got to get ready for this election and set their machines and so forth.
Well,
It's going to drag out for weeks and weeks.
I don't want to belabor this, but I
Yeah.
think Member Skolnick asked a very important question, and that was, what would be the mechanics of this if you were to exercise a veto?
So I think, Taylor, correct me, I think as a general matter of administrative agency law, a majority of members of the board can call themselves into session. Is that right?
And there's a specific statute that says the board can meet as often as necessary, so.
And that's our organic statute,
Right.
right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you all decide, if I, again, I haven't decided to veto anything. If I do, and you all want to override it, you all can come back into session and have that vote. Well in advance of the meeting on the 19th that we're set to have already.
will you be willing to call a special session, Mr. Chairman, if you veto any plans?
If we have a majority of the members that want the meeting, yeah, we'll have the meeting.
Well, if we have a majority, we'll call it. So it's,
Yeah.
I was asking as a matter of process, would you agree that you will call it, or you're just going to be dependent upon us to call our own?
And if you're able to get 4 votes I mean, how are you going to know whether we're for it or not unless you have a public meeting? Are you going to go out and canvass all the members individually to find out whether they're in favor of override or not? And that would not be a public process.
So if a majority of members wants a meeting, certainly we'll have a meeting under those circumstances. We may need one regardless of that based on what happens with Owsley County. But it takes, I believe, a 3/4 supermajority to override a veto. So certainly, if we can't even get a majority that want the meeting, we're not going to have a supermajority to override the veto. So that kind of resolves itself. But this is pretty hypothetical.
Actually,
I'd
I
like-
disagree. I think it goes to the point, I think there's a lot surround, and I'm sure the clerks are in agreement that there's a lot around this process that needs to be better defined next year. There's nothing we can do about it now. We set up, we didn't set up, we are required by law to approve plans that you know, that are changed from regular voting scenarios and precincts, but there's no process for it. The only process is that you can override, you can veto, we can override. There's no timelines in place, and we have no standards other than some very minor standards that clerks even know where to start from when we do that. So I think it's going to take a lot of work for us between now and the presidential to recommend or to establish processes through the regulations so that clerks understand what we are looking for and expect, just so there's a baseline. But this is a problem, not having not knowing how the process of veto and override, at least in law, they're, you know, they know how to do that in the legislature. You know, I mean, if they choose not to, you know, to pass a bill after the veto period, they know that the governor can override it. In this case, we don't really know anything except five of us would have to step up and call it. So.
Well, and to just further that point of Member Johnson's, which I think is a very good point, it creates an enormous amount of uncertainty amongst the clerks. You know, they can't have any certainty about whether their plan ultimately is truly approved or not, with the ideas sitting out there continually and right on up to the election that you could veto it if you wanted to, even after we've approved it. And we've got 119 plans that we've now approved. How do any of those 119 plans know that you're not going to veto?
Well, if you have suggestions for discussion with the legislature, we did start that process a couple of weeks ago and offered a number of thoughts from the clerks, from my staff, from the SBE staff, for improvements to be made to the law. The provision at issue here was last minute compromise language that was worked out among the KCCA and my office and the board staff, so we could all live with. It's probably not perfect. I certainly don't have a problem with improving it in the future, but for immediate purposes, we're not going to be vetoing plans the day before the election. I don't think anybody wants that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
we have a motion and a second. I'm gonna go ahead and call for question.
Okay. All in favor of approving, I think I said 19. It's all, so we've approved Woodford, we've approved Owsley provisionally. This motion does not include Warren or Christian. It does include all the other counties. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, I just have it. Give me just a second. I'm working on my little spreadsheet here. So approved are Boone, Bullitt, Carter, Davis, Grayson, Greenup, Harlan, Henderson, Johnson, LaRue, Lawrence, Lewis, McCracken, Madison, Marshall, Oldham, Russell, and Scott. So that leaves Christian and Warren. And I think that we can do this in one of two ways. We can either have Member Johnson, if you want to move to reject the plans, you can do that. Or if a member wants to move to approve the plans, we can do that.
I'm fine with the latter.
I'm going to make the motion to approve Christian and Warren.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
So let me just do a quick roll call if I can. We're all members aye, except for Member Johnson. Did I get that right? Okay. This is just for purposes of the minutes and so forth. Okay, so Warren and Christian are approved, and I think we're done. with that item of business. Okay, is there, so number 5 on our agenda, is there any other business before the board today? Hearing none. So we have on here an executive session, the staff put that on there just in case we need it. We don't feel that we need it today, so we're not going to need to proceed to 7. We'll just say for number 6, that unless we need to meet prior, then our next meeting, our regular meeting will be Tuesday, September 19th at 10 a.m. And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
I'd like to thank the
Super
board
diligent.
today for voting. Thank you very much for Warren County.
Thank you, Lynette. Thank you for being with us.